Hey folks, although in a previous video I said I was going to spend less time focusing on current events in South Africa, it seems that we are on the edge of a social turning point in this country, and not one for the better. So there are some things I would like to say while I still have the freedom to do so. What I'm going to try to do here is to explain once and for all why South Africa is the way that it is. This will not be a friendly or positive video, but I hope that nonetheless it will be useful. One of the most dangerous things, if not in fact the single most dangerous things that you can be as a white South African in this country, is racist. Because despite the fact that South Africa is routinely ranked as one of the most physically dangerous places in the world, our high murder and rape rates are not what draw the attention of the general population. Whether it's politicians or just the average man on the street, what gets the most attention, particularly because of our corporate media, is race-based scandals. Anything to do with race, or anything that can be made about race, even when it is not, is a constant fixture in our culture. And that is what holds us back. Now, I want to be absolutely clear here. I don't believe that the problems in South Africa are fundamentally because of race. Anyone who tells you that the issues that we deal with in this country come down to something as rudimentary and superficial as skin color is simply not smart enough to engage in adult conversation and should not be listened to in any serious capacity. What we have here that causes so much strife and discontent is an issue of culture. Because you see, well, for example, our economy is governed by regulations and mandates that are rooted in envy, bitterness, and a desire for revenge. These things aren't obviously referred to by their true names. These policies are claimed to have been enacted for the purpose of equity, fairness, and addressing past wrongs, even though by every measurable statistic, all they have produced is poverty, suffering, and decay. Another one of our driving issues that causes so much damage to South Africa that is unnecessary is ignorance. Ignorance is profoundly common here, whether in the political elites or just the average citizen. Worse than that, it is the kind of ignorance that goes hand in hand with confidence, so that those who suffer from it aren't even smart enough to know how much they don't know, and so they continue to harm themselves and others in their ignorance and constantly shift the blame away from themselves to some other person, usually a white person, let's be quite frank, or the fact that their personal circumstances were not easy or were somehow unfair. It should be made clear that South Africa is one of the wealthiest countries in the world in terms of mineral resources and natural beauty. There is no legitimate reason why we should have the kinds of poverty and abject suffering that we do. The reason that these things continue to persist is that the vast majority of our population are easily manipulated through their emotions by politicians who somehow still, even after all this time, are able to convince them that they really care about the needs and the struggles of the common man. Make no mistake, our political elite will be fine, even if worse comes to worse and everything goes to shit, because they have hoarded enough resources for themselves and their families that even if the rest of us starve or resort to killing one another, they will be safe, because in the very worst scenario, they can simply flee the country, as many African politicians have done in the past. Another issue I wanted to address is a very topical one at the moment, and in fact is the reason I'm making this video at all. Land expropriation without compensation. Now, all this kicked off because United States President Donald Trump made it publicly known that he was going to punish South Africa for its discriminatory policies and its possible human rights violations. Well, I can tell you that they aren't just possible, they do happen and are happening on a frequent basis. In fact, by passing this latest law to enable land expropriation without compensation, what President Cyril Ramaphosa has done is to embolden average people to try and seize land that does not belong to them, even before the government attempts to do so. This is currently going on in various places around South Africa right now, and it is becoming increasingly dangerous to live here. On a technical level, something I want to say is that land expropriation, as the ANC wishes to enact it, is one of the most foolish and short-sighted policies I can imagine. Because here's the deal. You cannot seize farmland from a farmer with years or perhaps even a lifetime of practical experience in the field, no pun intended. Hand it to somebody who simply wants a large plot of land for themselves and expect that farm to remain productive and viable. If you don't believe me and you think that I am simply exaggerating the situation or how bad things can get, don't rely on my word. Simply look at what happened to Zimbabwe. You would think that the example of Zimbabwe and the way in which its people suffer now because of what Robert Mugabe and others did years ago, you'd think that example would be enough to make our politicians rethink their course of action and choose a wiser path. But I guess not. I guess, like I said, ignorance prevails. I have been careful and measured in the things I have said here because, as I've told you previously, I do not have the legal right to speak freely. If I say something that can in any way be interpreted as discriminatory on the basis of race, I run the risk of being imprisoned. This happens quite frequently, and all the more so because of my previously mentioned example of this country's unhealthy obsession with race. I hope that although this video has not been an uplifting one, you nonetheless find it useful or informative in some small way. Look after yourselves, take care of each other, and for now, farewell.